Hey guys, welcome to another episode of the Marketing Natives. We're talking with Pete Briscoe and his new venture with coaching. We're talking about why self-care should be the number one priority for you as a leader to continue to grow, where Pete thinks the church and business are headed in the next 5 years, and how Pete started and runs his online coaching business through an RV.
This is the Marketing Natives, providing actionable ways to grow, improve, and succeed in your business. And now, your hosts, Christian and Aaron.
All right, Pete, thank you so much for jumping on to this episode of the Marketing Natives. Super excited to have you on.
Thank you, Aaron. It's my joy. This is really something I've been looking forward to. Thanks for inviting me.
Absolutely. So for those who don't know, who is Pete Briscoe? How would you describe him?
Oh, you're asking me to describe me?
Yeah, for yourself. Yeah.
You know what? I'm a regular guy who found himself in extraordinary opportunities and found myself rubbing shoulders with amazing people, and I'm a learner and I'm a sponge. And so as I got to spend time with these incredible people, I just learned and grew, and got to lead a church for about 29 years. And in the process, got to serve and work with just some remarkable people. So I'm kind of a sum total of the people that I've met, and it's been quite a journey.
See, and if you would have asked us to do some kind of intro, I don't think we would have done nearly the justice
Right, I love
what
that.
you just did. As both amazing and humbly awesome. So, as you mentioned, you're pastoring a church for 29 years, but like before you got into that industry as a kid, is that something that you've always wanted to do, is to jump into that realm or that style of work, was be around those types of people?
Yeah, no. So I grew up in a pastor's home. My parents led a church in outside Milwaukee, Wisconsin, for about 30 years, and the church grew exponentially in the years that I was in the home. It went from about 300 people to about 6,000 people in about 4 or 5 years. So our dinner conversations almost every night were my dad coming in and saying, "Wow, these are the 3 or 4 issues we're dealing with to try to figure out how to manage this growth. Any ideas?" And he would throw stuff out at the table, and we would just talk about problem solving. And I'm a little 9, 10-year-old kid jumping into these conversations. But and as I was growing up, people would tend to say, "Wow, Pete, you're probably going to do this someday." And I just wanted to be a pro basketball player, and then I wanted to be a sportscaster. That was my dream. And then I took a trip with a basketball team to the Philippines, and it's kind of a long story. I won't go through the whole thing, but we would kind of play the first half, and then we would do a presentation at halftime, and then play the second half, and we would beat them pretty well, so the people in town would really want to listen to us. And we would always try to connect with the local pastor that was there. It would lend him some credibility in the eyes of the people. And some of these towns were pretty tough. And there was one guy that had pastored a church in this town for about 5 years. And he had like 4 people in his church, one of whom was the little boy with leprosy in the town that no one would go close to. And my heart really went out to this guy, right? And so we asked him to come and introduce us and share the gospel at halftime. And he said, "I'm not going to do that." And we're like, "Why?" And he said, "Because if I go out there with you guys, one of you will get hurt, because every time I walk down the streets, they throw rocks at me, they throw batteries at me, and I don't want you to get hurt." And I just said, I really think they won't throw things with us there. Let's take the risk. And so halftime came, we sang a song in Tagalog, their language, and then this little guy walked out to present the gospel, and everyone started booing and hissing and whistling, and he just talked for about 5 minutes. Couldn't hear a word he said. And then he walked off, and I just felt so sad for him. And after halftime, I'm lacing up my shoes, and I see his little Filipino feet walking towards me, and I thought, what am I going to say to this guy? And I looked at him, and he was smiling from ear to ear. And I'm like, what are you smiling for? You just got booed out of the place, right?
Mm-hmm.
And he said, I've been praying for 5 years for a chance to share the gospel with my whole town, and tonight was the night. That's all that matters. And I just watched him loving the people around him, and was laying on my little bamboo mat in my hut that night. And I thought, if that's what it means to be a pastor, that's what I want to do. I just want to be with people. I want to love people. I want to help people. And that sounds like a good way to do it to me. So yeah, it was weird because my dad pastored this huge mega church, and I was never really drawn to that. And then was really drawn to the pastoring world when I saw it in a guy that pastored 4 or 5 people. And so that was always my heart, was just to help people and love people.
And
And you're
go ahead.
still doing that technically.
Right.
Tell us about
Mm-hmm.
your new endeavor.
My new endeavor. So yes, after 34 years actually of church ministry, which we absolutely loved, it was just a joy. We came to the end of our time, and we thought we really need to do something different. And there were a lot of reasons around that. But as we thought about what we wanted to do and what we needed to do, we just didn't really know at that time. We knew we wanted to serve people and love people, but we didn't know what that was going to look like. And so we decided to breathe a little bit. And so the crazy part of our story is we didn't know where we wanted to move, and we felt like it would be healthy for the church for us just to leave town and get out of the way so that the church could not have us around. And so we thought, where should we go? And we didn't know. So we sold our house and we bought an RV, and I literally live in a 40-foot motorhome now with my wife, Libby, and we drive around the country, and we went to different national parks, and we would just park outside and go into the park and hike and just catch our breath. And it was just so good for us to get some time like that. And then it also gave us time to dream about what we're going to do next. And so what my wife, Libby, and I are both doing now is we're doing coaching. We're coming alongside people, helping them move from this point in their life to where they want to go in the future, right? So counselors kind of look backwards and try to help you sort through struggles, trauma, things that were hard for you to get you launched into the future. Coaches kind of figure out where you are now and help you get going into the future. And so that's what I do. I do it in 2 different ways. I do it with pastors, and then I do it with executives and business owners. The common denominator are people who are point leaders in fairly large organizations. It can be lonely at the top, right?
Yeah.
And so it's a lot of the same struggles really that pastors of large churches have, and pastors of organizations have, or leaders of organizations have too. So I'm doing 2 things with those 2 groups. I'm doing communications training. So that's kind of the one thing I do. I've been a professional talker for 35 years. And so I help people learn how to talk better in front of people. And that's just a blast. I just really enjoy doing that. With pastors, obviously it's centered around sermon coaching, help them improve their preaching. But with executives, a lot of executives, the last speech class they took was back in 7th grade or whatever. And every once in a while they got to stand in front of their team, or they got to stand in front of the stockholders or whatever, and they gotta talk. And for some of them, it's not a very natural thing. So I want to be available to help with that. But then more importantly is really talking about their inner world. A lot of leaders neglect self-care on the mistaken notion that if they work 24/7, the company's going to be stronger. The fact of the matter is, a healthy leader is much better for an organization than an unhealthy one. Someone told me years ago, there was a time when I was working too many hours when our church was growing exponentially, and I was just working too much. And one of my leaders pulled me aside one day and said, the biggest gift you can give to Bent Tree, that was the name of our church, the biggest gift you can give to Bent Tree is a healthy Pete. And you need to figure out how to get healthy. And so that's a message that I share with business leaders and executives. It's like, the biggest gift you can give to this organization is a healthy you. And oh, by the way, wonderful fringe benefit, your life gets better too when when you start to take care of yourself and you start to do those things. So that's a really long answer to a really short question, but I'm trying to dive into what's really going on inside and how I can help um, men and women get their arms around what it looks like to actually live healthy in a healthy way.
When you're teaching people now, or you're coaching people now, rather, you have, so like you've mentioned this film room session, and you kind of equate that to like an athlete. Can you explain a little bit more about what this film session is? Because I feel like you touch on it. It's like a little taste on the website, but maybe you can expand a little bit on what actually is detailed or entailed with that.
Yeah, thanks, Aaron. It's yeah. So I was a college athlete. I played basketball in college. I mean, full disclosure, I sat on the bench and watched my teammates play basketball in college, but I was a very valuable member of the bench. Anyway, I loved the game, and I love to play hard, and I loved the coaching aspect of it. I love to watch coaches draw the most out of people. And then we had three kids. Our daughter played volleyball and basketball at Hebron High School. Then our two sons both played basketball and football at Hebron, and then our oldest son played college football. And so it was really fun talking to the boys after their football games, and they would go in early on Saturday morning and sit down with their coach, and the defensive coordinator and the defensive end coach would sit down with Cameron and go through every play that he had the night before, and mostly pointing out areas for improvement, right? I mean, some of it was encouragement. It's like, wow, you did that really well, but that's kind of what we expect of you. These things we need to clean up. And it was just remarkable watching the kids improve over time because of that in-depth personalized coaching. And then, when I was in seminary, one of the most helpful classes I had was called a preaching lab. And it was really fun because you would stand up in front of about 6 or 7 other students, and they had evaluation forms, and they were all sitting there just evaluating you, which, that's not too unnatural, right? And then the professor is sitting in back with a video camera, and he's videoing the whole thing. And then you sit down for a video session with him. And that was really intense. It was hard to watch yourself. I don't know if you guys ever listen to your podcast after you're done.
Oh
We
yes,
do,
yeah,
and we regret it.
it's
Just kidding.
it's hard,
Yeah.
right? It's like,
yes,
man, I sound so much cooler in my head than it sounds on
yes.
there, and and then when you're preaching, you're trying to convey some deep truth that matters to you, and so you're passionate about it, and you can pick up bad habits and stuff. And so that was so helpful to me, um, that I thought I'm going to start doing this with young leaders that I'm trying to develop. So over the years at Tree, we had a teaching team. We had a lot of teachers on our staff, and I just started doing that with them, where I would sit down with a video of their message. I would go through it first and come up with a bunch of input, and then I would sit down with them and force them to watch it with me, and I would point things out, and then give them 2 or 3 things to improve on, and then we would do it again the next time they taught. And over time, you just get better when, if you're evaluating yourself. Practice isn't enough. You have to practice and then evaluate your practice, right? If you're just practicing and you're never evaluating it, you're not really going to get better. But if you're evaluating and then you have someone who knows a little bit more than you evaluating it, you're going to really learn a lot. And so that's what I do. Right now I'm doing it all with pastors, but they send me a link of their sermon, and I go through it, and then we hop on Zoom and we throw it up on the screen and we watch it together, and then they practice those things, and we do, minimally we do 6 sessions like that. And over 6 sessions, I'll give them between 15 and 18 specific things in total to change and to improve. And after 6 sessions, they're just better, because there's things in communications that you should just never do. They're common mistakes that people do all the time. And then there's simple strategies too, that if you can employ some of these simple strategies, you can just improve your communication exponentially. And so I try to tackle both of those things. If I see things that are hurting them, I'll point them out. I'll give them alternative ways to do that. And if they're if, for example, if their structure is muddy, it's not clear, it's not easy to follow where they're going, that's just really easily correctable. There's simple structures that you can employ that just make the speech or the sermon or the message much more effective. So it's a lot of fun. We laugh a lot and we just have a great time.
So if you don't mind sharing, I'm curious now because I'm thinking of myself just auditing, and I'm sure the people listening too are obviously our audience is business owners, leaders. What are the common mistakes that you see? Like you said, there's a couple of common ones that are like a common thread. What would you say those are? And hopefully we're not doing them now, but I'm just like now I'm really.
Oh man, yeah. I mean, I've some in one of my trainings that I just worked with a whole teaching team in McKinney, Texas, just this last week, from a church. And one of the sessions I did with them, I call them the killer bees. They're just, I think I have 13 things in there that you should just never do. So I'll just throw a couple of them out at you that would apply across the board. One of them is that most people who are not used to speaking publicly struggle both starting and stopping. And if you ever watch someone who is kind of thrust into giving a speech, it takes them forever to get started. And then a lot of times they just don't know how to end. And so they just start looping at the end, and everyone in the room is just like, oh, please just stop, right? And so they struggle starting and they struggle stopping. And so, one of the things that I teach my clients is that experts tell you that when you have an audience, and this is pretty old data now, but when you have an audience, you have 18 seconds to grab their attention. If you don't have their attention in 18 seconds, you're already losing people, right? And I would think nowadays it's less than 18, because I mean, how long is a TikTok? Is it what, 8 seconds or whatever? I mean, things nowadays, they're just shorter, right? And if they get going a whole lot longer than that, we just click on to the next video, we go to the next thing. It's our attention spans have shrunk exponentially in the last 15, 20 years, as media has become so mainstream. And so I tell my clients, 18 seconds is really pushing it. If you haven't grabbed their attention in 8 to 10 seconds, they're already starting to look at their phone, or they're thinking about what they're going to do after the speech. And so one of the things I really drive home is the very first sentence you say when you start will probably determine whether people listen to you or not. Mm-hmm. And so you have to really think about that. So for example, for you guys as you're starting your podcast, just if you're thinking, man, I've got 10 to 12 seconds to grab their attention, you would probably strategize how to start it really carefully. You'd probably maybe potentially even write out your first sentence, mm-hmm. and practice it a couple times and just launch in so that you're grabbing people and heading off. And then, as they're trying to end, one of the things I'll use is I'll just talk about the analogy of an airplane. That a speech is like a plane ride. And so, when you're taking off on an airplane, you don't just go straight up. You don't just launch in. You grab their attention, but then you carry them along, and then you launch into your speech. And you take some time to. I mean, there's lots of different ways to do it. The most effective way to do it is to create tension. And it's not easy to create tension, but you want them squirming in their seats before you get to the point that you're trying to get across to them. And so this is all part of the introduction. It's all part of what we learn about. But then as you're landing the plane, you don't just boom, you just don't go straight down, which is what a lot of people do because they don't know how to stop. So they just say, okay, I'm done, and they walk off. And it's like, that you've got to land. You got to come in for a landing, right? And you've got to do it so that people can feel closure with the message. And there's specific things that you want to accomplish at the very end of your speech that help people remember what you want them to really remember. So it's all purposeful. And
we're going to restart the beginning of this podcast.
Well, I was going to say the good thing is we do record the beginning of the podcast at the end, But this is this isn't really a question, but it's interesting to see or to talk to you on this side of it, because I remember the most vivid series or message that it's ever happened in my life was actually from you. And I remember the series on Daniel. It was like a, I don't know, 5 or 8 week series or whatever. But I remember every single week, and you did exactly that. Like, you would always start with a story to relate to us. And I was just like drawn in. And as you mentioned, like, I was just, I don't know, like at the edge of my seat of what's going to happen. I'm like, well, we're going to talk about this next week. So it just kind of like left us wanting more. But yeah, you always introduce it with some kind of story to like draw us in and then take us to how it relates. So it's not really a question, but it's just it's interesting to hear this from the other side of it now, to know what was going on in your head.
Things, yeah.
So yeah, that's.
I think.
Go ahead.
I think I like a lot of times when you hear a great speech, it sounds natural, and the person who's giving the great speech is usually extraordinarily well prepared, right? And so it just flows. And a lot of times some people just have 2 or 3 great speeches that they just do over and over and over. So they're really practiced on it. And it seems so natural that it's like, oh man, that looks so easy. It looks easy to do that. And fact of the matter is, it's really not easy to do that. And there's a lot that goes on behind the scenes to create the illusion that this is just a natural conversation that we're having together. But what's cool is a lot of it's just really easy to get your arms around once you know about it. And for example, you guys will if you're smart, you'll probably, which I know you are, you'll probably have a conversation about, okay, how do we want to start our podcast so that we're really grabbing people's attention up front? And if you wanted to continue the conversation, it would be, how can we create tension, like, so that people are literally, as they start to listen to your podcast, they're like, man, I can't wait to hear the answer to this. I got to hear the answer to this. And you guys are marketers, you know what it means to create a need or a felt need, right? And that's kind of what you're doing in speeches too, is you're helping people say, wow, I really need to know the answer to this. If you're not creating that tension, speeches tend to come across pretty flat.
Yeah, it's such a great point. I feel like we could have a whole, well, like I said, I gave you the prelude at the beginning of this, that, hey, we're going to have you come back on later. So we'll have to have a whole conversation specifically around that.
Okay.
So with what you're doing now, how long have you been doing it? Or like, how long, obviously you've been in this profession for 35 years, and now you're just honing in on the coaching side specifically. But like, how long has that been going? And then like, what have you enjoyed most about the coaching side of things? Anything that surprised you?
So the how long have you been doing it question, you're very insightful the way you asked it, because I mean, the short answer is I've been doing this for 35 years. Because especially at Bentree's full of just incredibly gifted, sharp people, a lot of business owners, a lot of executives. And I got to walk with them through life over the last 30 years. And so a lot of the stuff I'm doing now with clients, I just did with my parishioners over the years. But anything surprised me. I think as I've started to work with clients, I think not much has surprised me. I think so. What I'm really trying to do is I have conversations with these folks, and I talk to them about the fact that there's kind of 2 aspects to a fulfilling life. And as I'm talking about this, I'm not necessarily talking about spiritual. I'm just talking about kind of what does a good life look like. If I wanted to do something with my life that was fulfilling, what would that look like, and rich? And one is the science of achievement, and the other is the art of fulfillment. And they're 2 different things. So the science of achievement, it's science because there's just been a lot of studies done on how to be successful at something, and it's not hard to get input and to get training on the specifics of building a business, for example, or running a business or whatever. there's best practices. You can learn the best practices. You can try to employ the best practices. If you invest a ton of energy and probably the life savings into your company, if you really are diligent, you can probably figure out ways to make, and it's all, much of it is science, right? It's figuring out the right way to do things or the wrong way to do things and avoiding those. And so a lot of the people that I work with, they figured out the science of achievement years ago. I mean, they're very successful. They know what they're doing. The art of fulfillment, however, is a different thing. And the reason they struggle with that many times is because they believed the lie that fulfillment comes from achievement. So it's like, if I just achieve a certain level, a certain size of a company, a certain bottom line in my bank account, if I achieve X, then fulfillment will all of a sudden show up in my home, right?
Mm-hmm.
Which, of course, it doesn't work that way at all. Achievement can bring momentary joy and fulfillment, but it doesn't bring lasting fulfillment. And all you have to do is look at people that have made it and see how driven they are to make it again, to realize that it doesn't bring lasting fulfillment, right? And so what does bring lasting fulfillment? And I think I'm not really surprised by this, but one of the things that really strikes me often in working with really successful people is how no one ever taught them the art of fulfillment side of life. And it's art because it's not like science. It's not systems and processes. It's not best practices. It's art. Like, we're all different individuals. And so the way that I'm going to experience a fulfilling life is going to look different than the way you experience a fulfilling life. And obviously, I think the spiritual aspect is a huge piece of that, but there's a lot of other aspects too that really aren't rocket science. And if you are willing to invest energy and focus and time in some of those areas, you can start to experience fulfillment, regardless of whether you're achieving to the level that you hoped or not. And so I think the surprise, or the thing that strikes me, is just how many really extraordinarily successful people there are that don't know how to experience a fulfilling life, because they've been so good at the achievement side. I would have just assumed that they would be good at the other side too, but it just doesn't seem to work that way. And a lot of the things that you really need to invest in to experience fulfillment in life, they don't have time for, because so much of their time and energy is going into the achievement side.
Yeah. And I can definitely look or see myself as that whatever you just described, looking at achievement and not fulfillment. And that's, we also have business coaches, and that's some of the things that they speak directly to us, is, about those things, about, I think you touched earlier about, self-care, and the importance of, for me, for example, I work in an office almost all day sitting down and have no time to really get out of here, right? And we sort of implemented just this 15 minutes every day around 3 o'clock. I get up and I walk the trail, and I just call it my reflection walk, right? And it does wonders. Like, in my head, I'm like, no, I need to work, right? And I don't have time for anything else, not anything else to fulfill me, right? I just need to get that achievement. But that little time of reflection brings hours and hours of fulfillment and even more achievement, right, to my business and my personal life. So it's taking those little moments of breaks and self-reflection that actually brings out the most output out of you. Those moments of not doing much, right? It doesn't feel like you're achieving much, but you really are. So
absolutely. Absolutely, Christian. We call it white space. And if you don't have any white space, so you look at a book, a page in a book, and if it's an academic book, there's not a whole lot of white space, right? They push the margins out to the edges. They get the print as far out. There's less space in between the lines. They go higher and low. I mean, it's just all copy and very little white space. And then you look at a children's book, there's a lot of white space in a children's book, right? And authors and publishers know that if you have white space on the page, it leaves more room for imagination.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a beautiful metaphor, really, for white space in life. If you have no white space in life, if you have no downtime where you're not producing something or accomplishing something, it's basically like a page with copy all the way to the edges. And over time, there's just no room for creativity. There's no room for ideas. It wouldn't shock me at all, Christian, if some of your best ideas in the next year happen on your little walk around the trail,
Mm-hmm.
because you'll have been taking your brain out of work mode and giving it a little white space, and that's where creativity happens. But it's also where health happens, right? One of the things I point out to people is, God took a day off. I mean, if God takes a day off, you could probably take one too. Like Sunday, the seventh day, was his day. I mean, he didn't have to take it. It's not like God was tired and he needed to take a day off. It's like he knew it was healthy to stop working and to do other things. And so I know you don't want to push that metaphor too far, but it's really basically taking some time off is creating white space so that you can be healthy, so that you can pour into your relationships, and so you can be more creative, and then you just bring much more to your company because you're healthier and you got more energy, you got more focus. The poor folks who are working 18-hour days and barely getting any sleep, 4 or 5 months into that routine, they're just not bringing much to the game. They're working really hard, but they're not helping much.
Pete, I see you as a visionary for a lot of different things, and I want to talk about like the future of what you see for business leaders and pastors here in a second. But before we jump to that, I want to take a time here to talk about our middle section, which is the tip for tips section. And for those who are first-time listeners or been listening for a while, you may know when we have a guest on, we like to ask them or have them ask a marketing question if they have one, and we try to answer it on the spot. But it's tip for tip, and if you're familiar with us, we used to do this as a video show only on Facebook, but now we are expanding it to the podcast, and we'll break it up that way too. But just want to leave it over to you, Pete, if you had a marketing question, or maybe several questions, doesn't matter, but just a marketing question that you have in your business that we could help you out with.
Yeah, thanks for the opportunity. I mean, I was a pastor for 29 years, and now I've started my own company. And so I literally had to read a book on accounting because I've always had a team to do my accounting for me, right? So everything is brand new for me. The sales, the marketing side, it's all brand new. And so, yeah, my question would be, when you're starting from scratch, what would be the best way to start? Like, would it be to buy ads on Facebook? Would it be to use your social media? Would it be to get out and get to physical settings where there's people that you might want to be introduced to? But what would, if you guys were sitting down with a client and they were just getting their business started, and they said, I can only afford to do one piece of marketing to get launched, where would you guys point him or her?
Very good question. And honestly, the fact that you answered, or you kind of gave your own answer in there, which is like our best piece of advice is to tell people, don't try to be everywhere. Or like most people tell you, be on Facebook and Instagram and Twitter and wherever else, and LinkedIn. And our approach to tell people is just dominate one thing and move on to the next. Don't worry about trying to be everywhere, because if you try to be everywhere, you'll be mediocre more than likely. And as you mentioned, you're trying to figure out accounting, you're trying to figure out your processes, and you're trying to work with clients. And then you're also trying to figure out social media, which could also be a full-time job. So I would say find a platform that you know your audience is on, and then find out one way to communicate with them, whether that's through video, whether that's through tag or like written word, like copy, whether that's through a podcast, however it is, and create content around that. For you, to be successful online through social media, you have to become a local authority. I think what's good about you is you you have so much experience, so you already have built that authority. Now people just need to
Mm-hmm.
know about you, and they need to
Mm-hmm.
have a way to communicate or like receive the your information. So focus on one
Mm-hmm.
thing. I think you're a very good writer, so I don't, maybe that's the way you go. I don't know, or if you'd like video, but I don't think there's a right or wrong answer. But just focus on one of those. I don't know if you had anything to add to that, Christian.
No, it just kind of got reminded of a tweet not too long ago where it's very simple. I think it said 2008 semicolon, and it had, you build a product, then you find the people that want to buy that product. In 2020, it's more of a, you need to build an audience, and then you can sell them a product or a service, right?
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
I think even the way that you build or communicate should be more towards, you're just building a community, right? You're building a community of
Mm-hmm.
pastors or business owners. Then you can, worry about selling to them, selling them services, selling them product, etc. But nowadays, building a business is more of, you need to build this community first, and then transition into, okay, how can I actually help this community that I built?
Mm. That's awesome. Thanks, guys. Very helpful.
Yeah.
I'm taking notes.
Awesome.
All right. And I was gonna say, and I look forward to seeing posts on Facebook and updates and stuff from you. So it's I don't know, it's cool to see that. So I definitely know that you are I think you had a post on Facebook. It was, I would normally not read this, but as you said, you have like 18 seconds or so to catch somebody's attention. I think it's the same thing for the written word. I'll read like 3 or 4 lines, and if that doesn't intrigue me, then I keep going. Then I don't keep going. So yeah, there's definitely a gift with the writing side. Whether you choose that one or you choose video or podcast, I don't know, but I feel like you could start a podcast and just dominate that, because blogs, just to give you an idea, there's 17 or 18 million blogs, and there's a rough yeah. Podcasts though, there's only like 7 or 800,000 in the world, and of those 7 or 800,000, most of them don't make past like 10 episodes. So it's an uncharted territory. It's like the Wild Wild West. So maybe you go that route. I don't know.
You can always convert podcast episodes into written.
Yeah, you dictate it that way too.
Yeah.
Awesome. Thanks, guys.
Absolutely.
That's great.
So we mentioned before we jumped to this tip for tip section, I always like to see, I don't want to jump too far ahead because I think the world changes so quickly, but where do you see the church or the pastoral industry or the business leaders, like what do you see, what kind of shifts potentially are happening in the next 5 years, and where do you see yourself like uniquely suited to fit and help them?
It's interesting, Aaron, because those are two very different worlds, right? So what a pastor is dealing with right now and what a business leader is dealing with right now are two very different things. There are some commonalities. Certainly there's financial instability, which both kind of leaders dealing with right now. But I think on the church side, I think what a lot of pastors are struggling with, and pastors are really struggling right now. I was with 3 of my pastor friends from Dallas recently, and one of them had just been involved in kind of a roundtable conversation with some leaders, and someone shared the statistic that over 51% of pastors in the last number of months, maybe 6 months, have had suicidal ideations.
Whoa.
I mean, that's over half are thinking, I don't know if I can keep doing this. That's a staggering statistic. I probably should have been careful about throwing that out on your podcast because I can't tell you where it came from, but I've heard enough anecdotal conversations too recently about pastors struggling that I know it's just really hard. And if you think about it, it makes sense. They're people, and all of a sudden they're talking to a camera every Sunday instead of to real people, and people in their body is struggling, but they can't really minister to them. And then people are online, but they're not really there at the church, so they don't know how many people are still in the church. And I mean, it's a time of true upheaval. But I think it's also, and you didn't ask me this, so I don't know if I'm answering your question or not, but it's such a time of upheaval for the church, because the way we've always done things, just they're not really working anymore. And so businesses have to tackle this too, right? Blockbuster, heard about this thing called Netflix, and they didn't really make the adjustment very quickly, right? And it cost them. And so things are always changing. That historically the church has kind of breezed through those things because it had these traditions that felt timeless. But even a lot of those things now in our culture, they're not really valued anymore. And so I had a pastor ask me just last week, does the church even survive COVID? Which, I mean, it's hard to even imagine that we're asking that question. And my answer would probably be something along the lines of, I'm not sure the church as we've known it will survive COVID. I think the church is just going to look very different on the other side of COVID. And then you would say, well, what's it going to look like? And I'll tell you, I have no idea. I think there's going to be some incredible innovation. I think there's going to be moving back towards smaller contexts as opposed to big, huge auditoriums. I think there's going to be some trends that come out of this that actually are really good for the church, but it's going to stretch pastors. It's going to stretch them really thin because they're going to be having to do things that they've never done before. I mean, COVID, a number of churches had never live streamed their services before until COVID, and all of a sudden they're not allowed to meet.
Mm-hmm.
And so these poor pastors they're literally trying to learn all this IT stuff on the run with no one there to help them. I mean, but that's just the tip of the iceberg for the innovations that are going to have to happen. So, and I think on the business front, I think, my focus with business leaders is on their inner world and on who they are as people, as human beings. I don't pretend to say I'm going to come in and help your business go to the next level. That's not my role. They know more about business than I do. But my role is really to do a deep dive into their soul, into their heart, into what they're feeling, into their relationships, and just talk about, how can we be more healthy as we're leading our organization. And so because of COVID and a lot of the other tensions, I mean, the political tensions are just escalating, and companies are having to make decisions all the time. And so the stress level is just going up and up and up and up and up. And what we tend to do when the stress goes up, if we struggle with fear at all, is the anxiety starts to take over, and we take much worse care of ourselves. We just, our mode of operation is to work harder, to work more hours. And so we just work more hours and more hours and more hours, which is the exact opposite of what we need to be doing. We need to be taking care of ourselves more now than ever. And so, what can I offer? I mean, I simply come alongside people and we do a deep dive, and then I'm there for them on phone calls as they're grappling with the stuff that very few humans really know what to do with. I mean, I don't know the answers. You don't know the answer. Are there even any answers? I don't even know if there are answers to some of this stuff, right? So how do we as leaders navigate unanswerable conundrums in a healthy way without snapping at our wives and without neglecting our kids and all those types of things? And that's what I'm trying to help people do.
That's very, very powerful. What would be, I guess, looking into the future for your own business? What are you most excited about, or where do you think you're heading with your business? Do you want to grow it like crazy? Do you want to try to keep it small and keep traveling? Where do you see yourself?
That's a great question, Christian. I really love living in an RV. It's really cool having wheels on your house. I mean, we're literally chasing 72 degrees and basically living outside national parks all the time, right? So I mean, it's beautiful. The downside is there's a lack of community. So we can start to feel a little lonely. We're in these beautiful places, but it's just the two of us and our friends aren't there. And so I think we're going to land somewhere at some point. Our hope is that as we drive around, we'll find a place and just go, oh, this is it. Let's put our roots down here. But because we don't know how long that'll take, we are both really building our businesses so we can do them from the road. And so my goal, because basically what I'm selling is my time and my experience and expertise. Um, I'm not looking to build this huge, massive organization. I think on the preaching coaching side, my hope would be long term to bring on some other coaches, so because there's just a huge need. I'm full on my preaching coaching docket already, and literally all I did was post that one Facebook post that you read, Aaron, and got my web page out there, and I'm full, and I don't have margin for any more at this point. So one of the things I'm going to do with that is I'm going to launch a program of some kind. The other thing, I mean, some of the people that I've done consult calls with for my preaching coaching, in 1 week, I had a call with a guy in England, a guy in India, and a guy in France, and none of those three guys could afford my services, and so I'm like, how do I help guys like this, that I know I could help, but I just, I've got to severely delimit because my business is me working one-on-one with people. I've got to just delimit how many clients I can have. And so scaling is going to be a challenge for me. I've got to figure out what that looks like. But on the preaching side, I'm going to start a course that people can get into for much less than my one-on-one coaching costs. And we'll keep it to a group of 10 or 15, and there'll be interaction and coaching in that format. And that's a way for me to be able to serve more people, and also to serve people that couldn't necessarily afford one-on-one coaching services. And so I'm excited about that. On the executive and business side, I'm really thinking that's just going to be one-on-one coaching, and I don't know how else to help people in those types of positions on the kind of stuff we're talking about. It just requires in-depth one-on-one conversations, but I just love that. I mean, I just love being around people like that. They challenge me, and I learn so much every time I'm with them. So yeah, the question you asked earlier, Aaron, is how long you've been doing this. In one respect, I've been doing it for 35 years, but I launched my business about 3 months ago.
Mm-hmm.
So as far as just the business is concerned, it's very young, and I've got so much to learn. And one of the biggest things I got to learn is how to scale this thing in such a way when what I'm selling is my time. And that's just a challenge.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just going to have to learn from people that have done consulting for years on how they go about doing that. And I haven't even started to do that processing yet.
On the community and course aspect of things, I recently stumbled on circle.so. So if you should search online, circle.so, it's a white label sort of community platform where, people can, pay, and you can have different sections, kind of like a Facebook group, but outside of
Okay.
Facebook, you have your own
Mhm.
sort of website, and you can, label it however you want. You can have your videos laid out in there, a section where people can ask questions and different things like that. Just a resource. I know I found it
Great.
the other day.
Thank you.
Just kind of looking for stuff. So
I'll definitely check that out. Thanks.
All right, I want to transition here to some rapid fire, more fun questions, and because I want to be respectful of your time, Pete, but also want to get in some fun questions outside of the business realm, if you're ready.
Absolutely. Let's go.
Okay. What purchase of $100 or less has most positively impacted your life in the last 6 months or in recent memory?
One of the awesome things about living in 350 square feet is you stop buying stuff. It's like we just don't have any room for anything. But wow, that's a hard question. $100 or less. Oh my goodness. You know what? Uh, I I recently bought a yellow legal pad because I used to do all my white space thinking on legal pads, and I've tried to transition to an iPad, and electronic and typing it wasn't working for me. So I bought and my creativity went off the roof. So I'm going to say yellow legal pad.
Nice. Okay. That definitely counts.
That counts. That counts. Wait, are we just doing the bold ones?
Yeah, let's do. Ooh, no, let's do. This one's very specific to Pete. You can go with that one next.
What is life like in a Class A RV, and how long have you been doing this?
So we've been in the RV just over a year, and life is just so much fun. It's so stinking fun. And that being said, the learning curve was mind-boggling. So I mean, the day we bought our RV was the first night we'd ever stayed in an RV. We've like
What? Oh my
we have
gosh.
never done this, right? We flew to Las Vegas to buy it from a couple that we found online, and we got out there, and the guy was incredibly gracious. He's become a great friend of mine, and he was a former FAA engineer, and he used to inspect airplanes, and so this thing was just clean, and he had taken meticulous care of it, and he took 2 days to train me on it. That when it's got a 450 horsepower diesel pushing engine in the back, I knew nothing about diesel engines. It's got a generator, it's got a furnace, it's got air conditioning, it's got wiring, it's got plumbing, and then you drive it down the road, and then you set it up and break it down. And I mean, the learning curve was just ridiculous. And so um, I had to change my mindset. I mean, I literally, a number of years ago, I survived in my world by figuring out what I was really good at doing and then getting other people to do everything else. And I don't have a staff anymore. So it's like I got to do everything. And so the RV life is incredibly fun. It's so cool to be able to just pack up and drive somewhere beautiful and just set up and just be there. Out in the Western United States is what's called BLM land, Bureau of Land Management. It's just public land. It's American land. We own it, and you can just camp there for free as long as you want. And we have solar panels on the top of our rig, so we can literally go out in the wilderness for 9 to 10 days and just sit there. And so it's incredibly fun. I love it. I recommend it. There's almost 2 million people living full time in RVs in America, which, if you think about that, it's just ridiculous. And
Wow.
if you try to get into certain RV parks, you believe it, because some of them you have to book a year in advance just to get in the park. And so that's why we like boondocking, which is going out into the wilderness, because you can just drive up and pick a spot, and that's a lot easier. So that's a long answer to a short question, but we're having a
Wow.
blast.
No,
That's awesome.
I was gonna say, I want to do a shortened version of that to try and test drive, because I feel like you guys kind of had to pull the ripcord. You're like, well, this is gonna be our home. We better figure this out like quick.
Absolutely.
That's
Yeah. Oh man, I got so many stories. We could do a whole podcast on RV stories. I mean, it's unbelievable.
Yeah, I was gonna say we could talk the first half of the next podcast about communication, the second half about like RV mistakes. Don't make these, or like.
Oh man, there's a long list.
All right, so now that you have a little bit more white space in your life, do you guys have? Well, you obviously have internet and stuff, but are you guys on? Are you watching anything like Netflix or Disney Plus or Hulu or anything like that? What are you binging right
Well,
now?
first of all, you made a huge assumption there about having internet, because I mean
Oh,
that's one of the challenges, right? I mean, we'll be parked outside Capitol Reef National Park in Utah for 2 weeks and have no internet,
oh wow.
and so we'll have to like drive to town and find a coffee shop to get Wi-Fi just to send emails, right? So that's one of the challenges of this life, and part of our challenge is making sure we can find a place to park that does have coverage. So we're working on all that. But you know what? We don't have Netflix. We have Amazon Prime, but I can't remember the last show we binged. We we tend to work all the time. We're both building our businesses, and so you know what that's like.
Hmm.
It's all consuming, and there's so much to do. So we watched. I can't remember the name of it. I can't remember the name of it. It was just a sappy show about a family that was kind of back in the past and in the future. And This is an awful answer to your question. I'm not a TV guy. I need a TV to watch my Mavericks and my Packers. Other than that, I don't really need a TV.
Yeah, Packers won yesterday. That's a crazy game.
Yes.
Okay, so I guess the last question here, and I don't know, do you keep up with the NBA?
I do, yes.
Okay.
Big NBA fan.
So who do you have, LA or Miami?
Yawn.
What would be your pick? I want to know.
I agree with you 100%. Yeah.
Really?
I'm just kind of depressed that it's just the same guys. Although, I mean, I would want to see Miami beat LeBron, but
Same.
I would just love to see. I'd love to see some new blood in there. And I actually, I don't like Miami because of what they did to my Mavs back in, was it 2006? I just thought the Mavs got the raw end of that deal. But I'm just really impressed with what they've done. And I think Spoelstra is a much better coach than we realized he was. And I love the way they play. I mean, they play basketball the way you're supposed to play it. They play as a team, and they play defense, and they pass the ball. And so and then LeBron will do something and LA will win.
Yeah.
It's just as depressing to me.
But if you're Mavs fan, when we're Mavs fans as well, one good thing about the Mavs is it looks like the future is brighter. You know, it looks like we're just a couple of pieces away, a couple of things away from really putting a full game together where it's like, okay, we can make a deep run and
absolutely
make it happen. So.
And you've got a transcendent player who has the ball in his hands 80% of the time, and that's a beautiful thing.
Oh my gosh. So fun to watch him too. So young and just amazing.
Yeah. Huge fan.
Pete, this was absolutely amazing, but one major thing we need to have for everybody who's listening right now, what is the best way for them to connect with you, to reach out for you for services, follow along with your journey as you continue to grow?
Yeah, so probably the simplest way is just to message me on Facebook. Just search for me on Facebook and then just message me. I can throw my email address out there too. It's just my name. So Pete Briscoe, and there's an E on the end of Briscoe. So BRISCOE @me.com. And if they just want to email me, I'd be happy to reach out to them. But simplest way is just to hop on Facebook and message me, and I'll get back to you as soon as I can.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Pete. It was a blast. Like I said, we definitely are really planning the next session here in the next year or so to have you on here. So thank you so much for jumping on, and thank you for your time.
Hey, thanks, Aaron. Thanks, Christian. It was great hanging out with you guys. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much.
The Marketing Natives Podcast is a production of BitBranding.